Peace and blessings, dear sister. How you doing today?
I am well. How are you, brother?
I'm doing outstanding. First and foremost, thank you, dear sister, for being part of this conversation, which is definitely much needed in our community. And let's jump right into it. Sister, we're discussing the imagery and how women are looked at. And from our conversation, I understand that you have a teenager.
Yes, I do.
So, from a mother's perspective, from a sister's perspective, from a woman's perspective, how do you share with him that how he should view women as a young man surrounded by temptation and peer pressure?
Oh, wonderful, wonderful question. And brother, thank you for having me. This is a very important conversation to have. So yes, I do have a 15-year-old, and to be honest with you, I started a long time ago. I started very long. Maybe when he was a toddler and he first began to speak, we started having conversations about what it means to be woman, you know, how to reverence his mothers, his grandmothers and things of that nature. So I started the conversation so early, even though it was child friendly, it was age appropriate. That was something, I started that foundation because I knew once we got to teenage and, you know, young adulthood, that the conversations would evolve. So quite simply, I've always told him to think about women like he thinks about me. Honor, respect. Without her, you don't exist. So there's a certain level of homage that always has to be paid to a woman, whether she's your mother, your grandmother, whether she's your sister, whether she's your neighbor. So I'm glad that I started so early because then it made it easy for this time right now. So I am very, very happy to say that my son, he's attracted to sisters who carry themselves, you know, in a very virtuous way, in a very gentle way. You know, he doesn't like the rather, you know, about their life.
Assalamu alaikum, sister. How you doing today?
Walaikum assalam. Doing just fine.
It's always a pleasure to have you be part of this beautiful conversation. Sister, the purpose of us even having the discussion with you, I know that we see a lot of things dealing with the representation and the poor images of the sisters that we see on television. Mm-hmm. What is your perspective on how women are portrayed, in particularly the black women, in today's media, and how that's being influential to a lot of our young women?
Wow. Well, of course, I'm as disturbed as anybody else who has any semblance of being civilized, you know. It's damaging, you know. It's damaging, and what I'm witnessing is the more and more as time progresses, the lower and lower the morality gets. You know, when it comes to us, the skirts get higher, the shirts get lower, and the communication becomes more vulgar. And so, yeah, seems to me like it's a progression moving in the wrong direction.
Well, some women may say that it shouldn't matter what I wear. We shouldn't judge. You know, if I want to come outside, you know, in a certain demeanor, what have you, it shouldn't matter. I should be respected, which is true. Mm-hmm. Women should be respected no matter what she has on, and that's not the spirit of the conversation. But where does modesty come in at?
Well, whether we like it or not, we are perceived with the eye. You know, you can, you know, just basically depending on the first impression of what you give out into the world is how you are perceived, you know, through the minds of people. And that, you know, can be a force for good or a force for detriment. So, I mean, in a sex-crazed society like the one here in America where we happen to reside, you know, we want to be careful with the perception that we give out to the world, because things can be dangerous. So yes, you know, we should be able to, you know, dress however we see fit, but we want to be wise about it as well. We don't want to put, you know, deliberately place ourselves in predicaments that could be harmful to us.
Those are very. That was beautiful right there, sister. And that's a good thing that you had that type of relation with your son. Now, we talk about images, and this is not coming from a place of judgment. We know that any one of us coming up went astray, and this society makes it attractive to live a certain lifestyle or to glorify certain images that we wouldn't find pleasing. With that being said, with the music and the things that we see on television, and even though your son's a teenager, he sees certain images. How do you keep that at a way where you explain to him that these things do trigger certain things of his nature if he's a natural man? You know, this is a conversation that most men have with their fathers, but it's always good to get the mother's perspective. How do you balance that when he sees risky things on television or women half naked, and he builds up his curiosity? What do you share with him about that?
Okay, wonderful. Another excellent question. Well, I've always made it a point to be very candid with my son, and I always allowed him to initiate these kinds of conversations. And I would just make sure my response was age appropriate. And of course, at 15, hormones are jumping. I don't expect him not to see a beautiful woman and not feel something. So what my conversation is with him about that is that feel that. Like, honor your feeling. Because I don't want you to suppress it, because that can turn into something else. But in your honoring that feeling, now you have to make a decision to make sure that you use that energy that wells up in you in the most profound way. So what is your goal when you see a beautiful woman? If you're attracted to her and you want to talk to her, then you can't go to her about how good her behind looks. You know, you have to be able to, you know, use that information and keep it discreet within yourself and approach her on the other beauty that I taught you about. You know, the beauty that you can't necessarily feel or touch, but the energy of her spirit, you know, the energy of her goodness, the things that she, you know, focuses on mostly other than being cute or what have you. So, the main thing I'm trying to say is that I don't ask him to not feel it, because that's not real. But what you do with that feeling will make the difference. So just make sure that you're critically thinking about what's going on inside of you and outside of you at all times. And that's a skill that you have to practice. It's not something that, you know, you're just going to get it, but you have to be very intentional and very focused on what it is that you're trying to create in that moment, because you're powerful enough to do that. So no big booty should take you off of what you know to be true in terms of queen mother.
We definitely know that there's a program that we had a discussion about. You want to talk about that? There's a Netflix special where they have young women, not too different from the beauty pageants, where young girls are definitely exposing themselves in a way that it can invite pedophilia. We want to speak on that program that you discussed about?
I think you were in referencing to Cuties, a Netflix film that I think is a pedophile's dream. You know, if you're into fetishes with young children, then that would, you know, definitely strike your interest. And so Cuties was very disturbing, because I kind of summed it up with it's no longer the pedophiles and those who have warped minds when it comes to sexuality. They're no longer lurking in the shadows or behind closed doors and hush hush. They're front center, right on Netflix film. Any man, woman, or child can turn it on and flick it on and get their pleasures galore. So no longer is it in the dark. It's right out front center, mainstream.
So what does that say about our society? Are we being conditioned to accept unmoral behavior? Are we being conditioned to lower the standards as we accept these kind of programs and there's no pushback?
Absolutely, positively. I mean, without a shadow of a doubt. You can just see the progression of other things like homosexuality, and how, again, at one point that that not taking anything from anybody who, if that's your lifestyle, then everybody deserves to be respected despite whatever your lifestyle is. But when you're in the school system and you're teaching young children 5 and 6 years old in kindergarten how to put on condoms and teaching them how to just the difference in man, woman, and child. And it's no longer the laws of nature, the natural laws. Everything is backwards, and so you can see that progression as it comes along with other things like pedophilia, with this whole show that just came on. So yeah.
Yes, ma'am. Now I'm gonna ask a question, and once again, this is coming from a woman's perspective, and this is definitely certain questions that a man has with his son. How important is it that you share with him that he should wait until marriage? Because a woman is a responsibility. Even though she has her own money, she's still a responsibility. Most men these days see it as that a woman should pay half. Now, times have changed. I'm from the old school, and I had a father that he handled everything. Even though my mother had her own money, she's the type of woman that she chipped in when she saw fit. But at one time that my father made it obligatory for her to pay 50-50. So, with that being said, how important is you share with your son that if he's deciding to lay down with a woman, that she's a responsibility and children cost? So what do you share with him about that aspect?
Another good question. That's a loaded question. There's a few things I want to point out, if I can. There was something you mentioned about a woman being independent and being able to pay her bills and things herself. I want to just take a minute to share something with that. I've always taught my son to think about his female counterpart as interdependence, not codependent. Not meaning that she should always rely on you for everything or that you should rely on her for everything, but interdependent. And I say that because in our traditions as African people, we understood that we were supposed to work together as a unit. That means that I'm going to bring some things and you're going to bring some things. That doesn't mean that now, and even for the young women now, sometimes they hear that and they think, that's not about being an independent woman. Well, being an independent woman as an African woman is almost like a contradiction. We are interdependent. We are supposed to be joined with our brothers to make, powerful moves. So I just wanted to address that piece about being independent versus interdependence. And so that is a conversation, again, that I started with him very early on. At the same time, I understand men who would like to have their wives stay home, raise the children, and take care of the household, and they take care of all of the financial things. If that works for you and your partner, then by all means, let's do that. But for me, and what I would like to see happen with my son, is that we all work together. So even if you're bringing in the majority of the money, you still have to contribute something to the household, because that's how the family works. And we're talking about man, woman, and child. We're not talking about being able to just pay your bills as a woman and that's that. So that's the kind of conversation that I have. And I give him those options because it's going to be his decision to do that. Just make sure he picks a partner that's on the same lines. So don't pick someone who is, don't want to work and don't want to produce anything. And now you upset because there's no help. Just be clear about what it is that you want to see happen for your family dynamic to work and be powerful in that. But I just, again, want to stress the whole piece about being independent versus interdependence. We're supposed to work together on all levels. Now, if that's just meaning money and tangible things, okay, we can work that out. But just in terms of what the roles are for one another in those relationships, it should be a partnership. We're not talking about half and all of that. Everybody should be given 100.
So what would you want to share with someone who's dealing with so low self-esteem, that feels that if you look at what's going on today, women who are making it in the industry, making millions of dollars, but their behavior is the lifestyle of a prostitute, the lifestyle of a stripper, It's glorified if a person wants to get out of a low income situation. That's the route that they go. There's no longer how we grew up. We saw a Claire Huxtable. She's a lawyer, respected, married, husband respects her. We don't longer see those images no more. Now we see it more risque as a way of us making it in the industry, or us making it out of our, poverty situation. So, from your perspective, what can we do to move from a different direction from that?
I think education is the key. I think explaining the full spectrum of what's going on to people who may not have a clue. All they know is, this is going to make me some money. I got to get the money. I got to, make it rain, or whatever the terms are these days, without understanding the fullness of what's going on. And so when we are able to educate our people and explain to them the agenda that's at play, they are more able to make informed decisions and understand that there are a myriad of different options to make money out here, and using your physical body to do it comes with repercussions and consequences, and not just for the individual, but for society as a whole, for those who's coming behind us, etc. So I think just informing the public can do a great deal in helping to change this trajectory of where we seem to be headed.
Yes, ma'am. Now that's a very key point, and that helps out towards the next part I want to ask you, because we're on that. That's something that society is definitely teaching a lot of women. I don't need a man, particularly the black woman. You don't need a man. You don't see any other. You don't see the Koreans. You don't see the Jewish women. You don't see the Indian women being taught you don't need a man. That's unheard of. And the reason the black woman is so unprotected, because we have this mindset that I don't need a man, or I don't need a man to protect me. There's nothing more honorable than wanting to protect your queen or protect a woman, period. So what do you say to that aspect, where women are using or being manipulated into this whole notion that she don't need a man? Now, I understand that some women have been hurt before, and independence comes around. So what do you say to that whole independent mindset?
I'm probably going to repeat myself, but like I said, I think it's a planned plot. I think it's a plan to teach black women that interdependence, and it's no different from this whole mindset that all men are dogs, or there aren't any good men, and and then the other thing is that if you decide that you want to be interdependent, then somehow that's considered a weakness now. Like, you're less of a woman if you're looking for a man to join forces with and be protected. Like, if it's honorable to protect your queen, then you have to know that for the queen, it's honorable to be protected. And I think that is something that we're going to have to put back in place. And it's not so far-fetched. A lot of times we think it's an idea that we're stealing from somewhere else. No, these are what our ancestors practiced. This is why we were able to do the things that we've done. This is why we've been able to create everything that you see and take a part of. It's because we understood that dynamic between masculine and feminine energy, and that it was necessary to have that in order to really make anything, of substance. So for me, I really don't subscribe to that independent woman. Now, that's not the same thing as saying I'm not going to take care of my business, because I'm going to do that as well. But it's nothing like having a brother around, because I'm a girl. You know what I'm saying? I can take out the trash. I can do that all day long, but I'm a girl, and I don't want my hands dirty. You know what I mean? So if he's here, then yes, by all means, let's let him be who he needs to be. And I'll do the same thing. And these are the conversations that my beloved and I have with our children on a regular basis, just so that we clear, not to get so caught up with all of the stimulation that, she has to be. Because then you'll find young men looking for women who don't really need them in terms of money, right? So then that just it messes up the balance of what we supposed to be to one another. So I'm not with the independent situation. I don't raise my hands when they say
as a
that.
mother of a daughter, what kind of advice did you give her in reference to the dress code and how men should see her past her sexuality? What advice did you give her?
Well, I think the best advice I can give her is just observing me, her mother. You know, we can, children, if they don't do what you say, they do what you do. And so I think, the best encouragement I can give her is to be, the best representation of a woman, that I can be, properly. So she can in turn, watch my moves and cater, see how I dress and act in kind.
Yes, ma'am. So in closing, dear sister, what do you want to share to the world that if you had the power to change anything, what would it be?
Wow, that's a big question. I think if I had the power to change anything, it would be to create a whole nother civilization outside of the one that we're in mentally. I know when most people, when they hear that, they may think me having to pick up and actually go to another physical location, but we can change the whole society just by changing the way we think.
Praise be to Allah. Dear sister, as always, we thank you for the kind words and the words of wisdom, and we pray that whatever words you share will manifest and help someone realize that they're more valuable than taking their clothes off. And there's something that was always shared, that everything that's worth having is always hidden or covered. So thank you for your words of wisdom. May God continue to bless you and your family, and we look forward to seeing more of you when you share your wisdom with us, sister. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Praise be to Allah. Well, dear sister, we definitely appreciate your words of wisdom, and your son is blessed to have a mother who's willing to instill certain values into him, especially in a world full of temptation. And this is where the village comes in at, where we can grab our children, our women, and our brothers and have these conversations that we can come together. And this is where our power is. It's not in an election, it's not in a politician, it's in our unity. And as the Honorable Elijah Muhammad always taught us, the family is the cornerstone of the community.
That's right.
Where there's a strong family, strong marriages, you have a strong union. So thank you for your wisdom, dear sister.
Thank you for having me, brother. I love to be a part of this. Thank you so much.
Thank you, sister. May God continue to bless you.